Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about electric vehicles because the US market is in a pretty interesting situation when it comes to electric vehicles. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So to start things off, electric vehicle sales now make up over 7% of the total automotive market here in the US. And if you compare that to the global trend, we're actually quite a bit behind. Globally, electric vehicles make up about 18% of vehicle sales, but over 7%. That's the biggest the EV market has ever been in the US. And the biggest player in the EV market here in the US, Tesla, is actually having a better year this year than what they had last year. As of Q1 of 2023, Tesla sold over 170,000 units, whereas in Q1 of 2022, they sold about 163,000 units. Now, something that does need to be noted is every single automaker outside of, Stellantis pretty much is up year over year when it comes to sales. And so Tesla being up year over year doesn't necessarily mean that it's this big boom for EVs. It's just everyone's up, and Tesla's percentage that they're up is actually not as strong as some other automakers that are selling traditional ICE cars. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But while we're on the topic of Tesla and the EV market, something else to note is that Tesla has lost a lot of market share over the course of the last year. I mean, Tesla used to be the EV market, and then, they were like the big player in the EV market, which they're still a really big player, but now they're only about half of the EV market, whereas, about a year ago, roughly, they were what, like 70-something%. And so every single year, Tesla's market share just continues to dwindle. But again, the overall market increases, so it's not like Tesla's selling fewer cars. They're actually selling more cars. It's just the market's getting bigger. There's more players within the market. But it does need to be noted that that 54% market share is still quite impressive because it makes Tesla by far the biggest EV brand in the US. Number 2 is Chevrolet right now, and their market share is still under 10%. And when you take into account all of the brands under the GM umbrella, they're basically right at 10% for market share. If you guys are wondering, number 2 right now, it looks like it is Toyota, with just over 7.5% with their market share. And that's the thing, is when you look at the market share of all the other companies that make up the EV market here in the US, it's all really small percentages. Again, 2% here, 3% here, 4% there, so on and so forth. And so as you can see, the EV market is still, again, it's very small here in the US, and it's very consolidated under the Tesla umbrella. Now, one last point on the data is the fact that when you look at this data, you have to look at it objectively. And this is something that I feel like EV-friendly people are not able to do, because I've read several articles on the whole EV situation here in the US, and what I consistently hear is that the EV market's blowing up, it's taking over, EVs are the future, this and that. And it's like, well, okay, the EV market is just over 7% of the overall US market now, and on top of that, the growth is not exploding. It's consistent, which is good, but it's not crazy. And again, we are in a car market where there are just more new cars being sold. The overall new car market is in a growth stage right now, and so it makes sense as to why there are more EVs being sold. So again, with what the data shows, it shows that there's consistent growth with EVs, but it's not explosive growth by any means. And so this is where we now dive into my quote-unquote hot take on this whole EV situation. I feel like it's being completely blown out of proportion. And what I mean by that is that there is definitely a larger group of people that want EVs compared to the current supply of EVs, and that's why the market share is increasing. But again, if you look at the rate of which the market share is increasing, then you can see that it's not like everyone wants EVs. It's not even close to that. And so I think that the objectives that we have set from a lot of automakers and from policymakers as well are just too aggressive compared to what the average consumer wants. And I think this is why we're starting to see EVs stack up on dealer lots with certain manufacturers. And I know that some people will make the argument that, well, that EV doesn't have good enough range, it's overpriced, the tech isn't up to date. And yes, there is definitely an argument to be made for that with some EVs. But there are also some EVs in the market that are priced right compared to the competition. They've got really good features, they've got really good range, they have everything going for them when it comes to an EV, and they're still not selling. And the reason why they're not selling is because there's just not enough demand. Again, the demand is definitely increasing as time goes on, and that market share, again, I definitely see it continuing to increase. But with what the data shows and with what I'm hearing from real people when I go and just, talk to people out in the world, I know this is more anecdotal, but when I go and talk to people about EV adoption, people that are shopping for cars, what I hear time and time again is that it's just not there yet, right? People don't trust the charging infrastructure. They don't trust, living with an EV. And, the biggest thing is just long-term ownership. A lot of people are like, yeah, it sounds great for, the first 3 to 5 years, but what about 10, 15 years down the road? Like, is the car still going to be running, or am I going to have to replace a battery? And how much is that battery going to cost? There's a lot of uncertainty associated with it. Again, that's more on the anecdotal side of things. But the point that I'm trying to make here is the EV market share is going to continue to grow at the same time that Tesla's market share is going to continue to shrink, but that's not going to be a problem for Tesla because the overall, again, EV market's growing. So Tesla's going to continue to sell more cars, but I definitely think that the EV market's going to be a lot smaller here in the US than what, again, policymakers and automakers think. We're at 7% right now, and, again, this is just my personal opinion. You can agree or disagree with it. I think that once we get into that like 15 to 20% range, this is when people say that there's then going to be way more widespread adoption. I think that we're going to see an even bigger pullback than what we have right now, because I think at 15 to 20%, that's going to be most people that want an EV at that point. And then the rest of the population that's buying cars at any given time, they're just not going to want the technology. They're going to want either hybrids or regular ICE cars for a number of different reasons. I want you guys to let me know what you think is going to happen with the EV market moving forward. Do you think that it's eventually going to be 100% EV adoption? Like, you think that the technology is far superior to ICE cars and hybrid cars and all of that? Or do you think that there's going to be a cap that's just a little bit higher than what I'm saying? Do you think it's going to be 30%, 50%, whatever it is? I'll see ya.